The Cleveland Cavaliers just traded Dennis Schroeder, but this might be about much more than moving one player. The Cavs are suddenly clearing millions off their books, and with some big names still available, it looks like they're making room for something much bigger. I've got an idea of what it could be. Let me break it down. On a quiet Friday afternoon in the middle of August, when most of the league had already checked out for the summer, Shams Charania dropped a report that jolted Cavs fans awake. The Cleveland Cavaliers were trading Dennis Schroeder and cash to the Charlotte Hornets for Tre Mann. On the surface, it looked like a minor guard swap. Underneath it, it was a calculated financial move. Here's what it actually did. The deal helped the Cavaliers clear $6.8 million, which moved them to about $29.6 million under the first apron per Keith Smith. That's not pocket change. That's a team deliberately restructuring its books in the dead of summer when trades like this almost never happen. Who says August is the NBA's dead time? We have a Friday afternoon trade to report. Schroeder wasn't just any player either. He's become something of a basketball nomad. The veteran ball handler was joining the 12th franchise of his career after being traded for the 9th time, the second most times for a single player in NBA history. Only Trevor Ariza has been dealt more, and only Ish Smith has played for more teams. For Charlotte, they're getting a guy who's proven remarkably steady. He's been remarkably durable over his 13-year career, playing in at least 60 games in each of the last 12 seasons and at least 70 games in each of the last 3. But this wasn't really about Schroeder's game. It was about what he was costing Cleveland on the books. Schroeder was set to make $14.8 million this season, with a $4.4 million guarantee for the 2027-28 campaign. That's real money for a team already living at the edge of the NBA's most punishing financial territory. Swapping him for Tre Mann's smaller deal wasn't about basketball fit, it was about breathing room. And that's where Tre Mann comes in, because he's not just a throw-in. Mann, the 18th pick of the 2021 draft, spent last season buried in Charlotte's backcourt rotation, behind Kobe White and LaMelo Ball, managing just 5.5 points, 1.7 rebounds, and 1.6 assists in 12.6 minutes. Across 53 games, he's 25. He's cheap. And most importantly for Cleveland, his number on the books is a fraction of what Schroeder's was. Cleveland generated roughly $6.8 million in cap savings in the deal by swapping out Schroeder's $14.8 million salary for Mann's $8 million figure. Now here's where it gets interesting. This wasn't just about saving a few million for the sake of saving it. The transaction moved the Cavs approximately $29.7 million below the first tax apron and $42.3 million below the second apron, giving the team more flexibility to re-sign James Harden and avoid going back into the second apron. Two names sitting right there in that sentence. Harden's extension and the second apron are the whole ballgame. Everything the Cavs have done this summer traces back to squeezing under that line. And the front office wasn't shy about connecting the dots either. Shams reported that alongside the trade news, the Cavaliers remain in constant communication with James Harden and his agents on a new contract to return to Cleveland. While they strongly pursue two free agent forwards, restricted Peyton Watson and unrestricted Jonathan Kuminga, made more viable with Friday's trade, that's about as direct a confirmation as you're going to get. This trade wasn't an isolated transaction. It was a chess move, and the board it's being played on has Harden, Kuminga, and Watson all sitting on it at once. So why now? Why sacrifice a proven veteran ball handler right before training camp? Because the calendar was working against Cleveland. Free agency has dragged into the second week of August with names still unresolved. And every day that passes without cap room locked in is a day closer to training camp with no answers. The front office needed cash off the books before it could even think about making its next move. Schroeder was the toll they had to pay to get through the gate. It's worth sitting with how strange this is for a team that made the Eastern Conference Finals. You don't usually see a conference finalist actively getting worse on paper in the middle of August. But that's precisely what analysts flagged when grading the deal. This is a setup trade for Cleveland. We just don't quite know exactly what it's setting up. The uncertainty is the whole point. Cleveland isn't done. This was step one. To understand why clearing this money mattered so much, you have to understand just how boxed in the Cavaliers were before the trade. This wasn't a team with a normal cap sheet doing normal offseason business. This was, by outside accounts, the most extreme financial situation in the entire league. Go back to the spring, right after Cleveland's season ended. The Cavs were in a difficult salary cap situation. They were the only team in the NBA above the second apron. This left them with multiple restrictions entering the offseason. Being above the second apron creates major restrictions. Those restrictions aren't cosmetic. They change what a front office is even allowed to do. Cleveland couldn't combine salaries in trades for big-name players, couldn't use their nearly $17 million in trade exceptions, or sign players using the mid-level exception of $3.6 million. Think about what that means practically. A front office that wants to upgrade its roster usually has three tools: trades, exceptions, and the mid-level. The second apron takes all three off the table simultaneously. These limitations were going to make things difficult if the Cavs wanted to only make smaller moves. Cleveland wasn't just uncomfortable up there, it was operationally handcuffed, and the number attached to that discomfort was steep. A projected $225 million payroll had Cleveland sitting roughly $3 million over that second apron. $3 million might not sound like a lot in a $225 million operation, but in the NBA's hardened apron system, $3 million is the difference between a team that can operate freely and a team that's legally boxed into a corner. So the front office started doing what front offices do when they're staring down a wall. They started shopping. Multiple reports throughout the summer made clear this wasn't a one-trade plan. Cleveland had been shopping role players Schroeder and Max Strus for much of the offseason. In an effort to create more wiggle room below the tax aprons, Schroeder was the first to actually move. Strus, notably, is still sitting there, a name to watch. Beyond Schroeder, the roster situation had already been shifting under Cleveland's feet in ways that made the depth chart look thinner than it did during the playoff run. Couple the decline in production with the losses of Dean Wade and Keon Ellis, and Cleveland's overall depth had taken a real hit. That's important context. This isn't a team subtracting from a position of excess. It's subtracting from a roster that's already lost pieces, betting that what it adds back will outweigh what it lost. There's also the matter of what the Cavaliers don't have to work with when it comes to future assets. Cleveland can't just go grab picks to sweeten a trade offer the way healthier cap teams can. In the 2026 NBA Draft, Cleveland acquired San Antonio's first-round pick through the Hawks in the DeAndre Hunter trade. But beyond that, the Cavs have limited draft assets. They don't own first-round picks in 2027 or 2029. And because of the Stepien rule, they're unable to trade first-round picks in back-to-back years. That single fact reframes everything. Cleveland can't buy its way out of the second apron with draft compensation, the way some rebuilding front offices court big names. Its only lever is its own current roster. Trimming, swapping, restructuring. Schroeder for Man is exactly that kind of move. No picks changed hands, just money moving off the books in exchange for a younger, cheaper body. And the front office knew exactly what it was doing when it made this specific swap. Analysts who cover cap mechanics for a living framed it plainly. It ultimately made sense for Cleveland to clear this money. When you owe an overpaid player money across multiple seasons and can move him without spending draft picks, doing so usually makes sense. No picks lost. No future mortgaged. Just flexibility purchased with a player Cleveland was never going to build its next contender around anyway. But there's a catch buried in all of this, and it's one the Cavaliers can't spin away. None of it matters until we know how Cleveland uses this newfound flexibility. For now, they've made themselves a worse basketball team. That's the tension driving this entire offseason. Cleveland took a step backward on paper. Banking everything on a step forward, nobody can guarantee yet. Schroeder himself wasn't nothing to lose either. Just months ago, he was contributing real minutes to a Cleveland team that made a deep playoff run. Schroeder arrived in Cleveland via a midseason trade from Sacramento, appeared in 30 regular season games for the Cavaliers, starting 3, averaging 8.2 points, 4.3 assists, and 2.3 rebounds in 21.4 minutes. And logged 17 playoff appearances, though his scoring dipped to 5.5 points per game in the postseason. That's a rotation piece walking out the door, not a throw-in nobody would miss. So Cleveland's front office made a bet that a marginal backcourt downgrade today is worth it. If it buys the flexibility to add something bigger tomorrow, the next question is obvious. What exactly is that something bigger? Every roster has a hole that everybody can see coming from a mile away. And for Cleveland, that hole is on the wing. The Cavaliers made the Eastern Conference Finals with a roster that could shoot and defend guards just fine, but got exposed anytime it needed a bigger, longer body to match up on the perimeter. That's the gap this whole cap-clearing operation is designed to fill. The chase actually started somewhere else entirely, with a name every Cleveland fan wanted to say out loud. The Cleveland Cavaliers had been pursuing former NBA champion Jonathan Kuminga for quite some time, expected to be a contender in the Eastern Conference while desperately needing to acquire a starting caliber wing. Before any of this cap business, Cleveland's real dream was LeBron James returning home for a third stint. That fell through when LeBron picked Philadelphia instead, and it left the front office needing a plan B in a hurry. Kuminga became the obvious target. Young, athletic, a name with real ceiling attached. But the negotiation hit a wall fast. Contract talks had been the biggest obstacle for Kuminga, and every team that pursued him this summer. Though the Cavaliers recently met with him in an effort to work toward a potential deal, the number Kuminga wanted didn't match what a team fighting apron restrictions could realistically offer. Kuminga continued to seek a deal exceeding $20 million annually, and that ask, paired with Cleveland's cap math, made things complicated fast. So the front office pivoted, and this is where Peyton Watson enters the story. He's not a household name yet, but the numbers behind him tell you why Cleveland fell in love with the idea. During the 2025-26 campaign, the 23-year-old played in 54 games and made 40 starts, averaging 14.6 points per game to go along with 4.9 rebounds, 2.1 assists, and 1.1 blocks. He's young, he's already a full-time starter for a championship-caliber Denver team, and his shooting has taken a real leap. Watson averaged 14.6 points, 4.9 rebounds, and 1.1 blocks while shooting 41.1% from three. That kind of two-way profile is exactly what a team that just got bounced by a bigger, longer Knicks squad is hunting for. And multiple insiders confirmed the shift in priority directly. Jake Fisher reported that the Cavaliers were more interested in working out a deal with Denver Nuggets restricted free agent Peyton Watson than they were signing Kuminga, saying, "Cleveland is, I think, prioritizing a Peyton Watson effort compared to Jonathan Kuminga right now." The problem is that landing Watson isn't as simple as writing a check. He's a restricted free agent, which means Denver has to sign off on any deal, and that requires a full sign and trade rather than a straightforward free agency signing. It would be easier for Cleveland to land Kuminga, since it wouldn't have to be through a sign and trade, the path the Cavaliers would have to take to get Watson. That's a meaningfully harder road, which is exactly why every dollar of cap flexibility matters so much right now. And here's where the Schroeder trade folds directly back into this storyline. Insiders had been floating this exact scenario for weeks before the deal happened. The Cavaliers appeared to be prioritizing Peyton Watson now over Jonathan Kuminga as their Plan B wing option after missing out on LeBron James, and Cleveland would offer Max Strus or Dennis Schroeder alongside a future swap. That's not a coincidence lining up after the fact. That's a plan Cleveland had been building toward in public view for weeks, and Schroeder was the piece they finally moved to make it real. The reporting after the trade made the connection explicit. Mark Stein reported that Cleveland was a team to watch for the forward, specifically noting that trading Schroeder or Max Strus would allow the team to make a representative 4-year offer to Watson. There it is in plain terms. The trade wasn't about upgrading the backcourt. It was about buying a 4-year contract offer for a 23-year-old wing 3 states away. Denver's situation only adds fuel to this. The Nuggets don't have the luxury of simply matching whatever Cleveland offers. The Nuggets wanted to keep Watson, but a large gulf in annual salary demands remained. Denver was the only team over the second apron threshold for next season. A team stuck above the same brutal financial line the Cavs just escaped isn't in a position to bid freely against outside offers. That's leverage Cleveland is clearly aware of and clearly using. Still, this isn't a one-horse race. The Bucks have been floated as the other major competitor for Watson's services. The Bucks and Cavaliers were viewed as the current favorites to acquire Peyton Watson via sign and trade, with the Nuggets wanting to keep Watson despite the gulf in salary demands. Whoever wins that race gets a rising two-way wing already proven inside a contending system, exactly the ingredient missing from Cleveland's playoff roster. And even after the Schroeder move, Charania made clear the front office hasn't picked a lane yet. Charania reported shortly after news of the Schroeder trade broke that the Cavaliers are still strongly pursuing both Kuminga and Watson. Two targets, one open cap sheet, and a front office that clearly isn't finished dealing. None of this, not the trade, not the wing chase, not the cap math, can move forward until Cleveland resolves the one contract sitting at the center of the entire operation. That's James Harden, and his situation is the real reason this offseason has stretched out as long as it has. Rewind to how Harden even got here. Cleveland acquired the soon-to-be 37-year-old in a trade that sent Darius Garland to the Los Angeles Clippers in February, and it was assumed Harden wouldn't be a rental and would instead re-sign with the Cavs this offseason. He helped carry Cleveland to the conference finals in his half-season with the team, and everybody around the league treated a return as inevitable. The devil, as always, was in the actual number. Harden had leverage of his own, and he used it. Harden was an unrestricted free agent, having declined his player option for the 2026-27 season, and that opened up a chance for Cleveland to pursue LeBron James, who ultimately passed in favor of the Philadelphia 76ers. That's a fascinating wrinkle. Harden's own decision to bet on himself is part of what let Cleveland even take a swing at LeBron in the first place. And when that swing missed, Harden was left waiting on the sideline for the front office to sort out its next move before finalizing his own. That waiting game has stretched on for weeks, and reports have confirmed just how tangled it's gotten. Harden remains an unrestricted free agent, and we're in the second week of August. The future Hall of Famer declined his player option for next season and told Cleveland he would sign his new deal after the team got LeBron James, Jonathan Kuminga, Peyton Watson, or DeMar DeRozan. However, the Cavaliers didn't get LeBron, and there has been no movement on Kuminga, Watson, or DeRozan. That's an extraordinary situation for a franchise star to be sitting in, essentially waiting on the outcome of moves he has zero control over before agreeing to terms on his own next contract. But insiders close to the situation insist there's no bad blood forming. I don't sense any kind of situation between the Cavs and James where talks are going to break down, or talks are going to get so bad that there's going to be bad blood between James and the organization, or James's camp and the organization, Fedor said. The financial shape of a new deal has been reported consistently for months now. James Harden would like to return to the Cleveland Cavaliers next season, but wants a long-term deal to make that a reality. Harden reportedly declined his one-year, $42.3 million option with the team, and despite declining that option, he's working with the team on a multi-year extension. Harden's new deal will likely result in the guard making more money over multiple years, but at a decreased annual salary, in other words, a pay cut per season in exchange for security across more years. That's exactly the kind of structure that could help Cleveland's cap sheet without pushing Harden out the door. Why would Harden agree to less money per year? Because he doesn't have much of a market elsewhere, and both sides know it. The Cavs have plenty of leverage in negotiations, considering that there are no teams legitimately in contention for Harden's services that have significant cap space left. In fact, only 3 teams are under the salary cap, and none of them are threats to snag Harden away from Cleveland. That leverage is exactly why Cleveland has been comfortable letting this drag into mid-August, instead of rushing a deal in July. And the front office has been candid that this stall is deliberate strategy, not dysfunction. By not signing Harden to an extension yet, the Cavs have given themselves more flexibility as they weigh their options, both on the roster and financially. The timing of Watson's candidacy with the Cavs, paired with Harden and Cleveland nearing a contract resolution, raises the question of whether the wheels are in motion on both fronts at once. That's the whole plan laid bare. Wait on Harden's number until the wing chase resolves, then lock everything into place in the same stretch of days. The clock, though, is not infinite. Reporting out of Denver and Cleveland both flagged that Harden's patience has limits. James Harden had been waiting on a new contract, which could complicate Cleveland's pursuit of either player. Jake Fisher didn't believe Harden would wait much longer, potentially forcing the Cavaliers to back out of the race for Kuminga and Watson. That's the tightrope Cleveland is walking right now, trying to squeeze a franchise cornerstone's patience against the timeline of a sign-and-trade market that moves on its own schedule. So where does all of this actually land? The Schroeder trade wasn't the finish line. It was the down payment, and the pieces coming together since then paint a picture of exactly what kind of team Cleveland is trying to assemble heading into training camp. The stakes are real, and outside markets have already started pricing them in. Sportsbooks aren't treating Cleveland as a top-tier contender heading into the new season just yet. Cleveland entered the move sitting in the back half of the NBA Championship Futures Board, with sportsbooks pricing the Cavaliers between roughly plus 2,500 and plus 3,000 to win the 2026-27 title depending on the book. That's a team viewed as good, not great, which is exactly the gap adding a proven starting wing is supposed to close. Bettors and analysts alike flagged that the guard swap itself wasn't the move that changes those numbers. A trade motivated purely by cap clearing for a Watson pursuit is not the kind of headline that typically shifts a contender's title number on its own. But it's worth watching whether Cleveland's odds tighten if the Watson chase turns into an actual signing, since adding a 23-year-old two-way wing to a team already positioning itself below the tax aprons would be a more relevant market mover than the guard swap itself. Translation: nobody's impressed by Schroeder for man on its own. Everybody's watching what comes next, and what comes next might not stop at just one more move. There are still names on the roster analysts believe are trade bait to complete this puzzle. Cleveland has also reportedly been exploring acquiring Peyton Watson or Jonathan Kuminga via sign and trade, but doing so would hard cap the team at the first apron. So more cost cutting, perhaps involving Strus and/or Mann, could still be coming. That's right, Trey Mann, the very piece Cleveland just acquired, could himself be flipped again if the front office needs to squeeze out a few more million to close a deal. Nothing about this roster feels finished. Not every insider is convinced Cleveland will actually land its top target either. There's real skepticism about landing both names Cleveland has been chasing all summer. Yeah, I think both of them is highly unlikely. Chris Fedor said on the Wine and Gold Talk podcast, "Again, we never say never, and we try and deal in reality as much as we possibly can. Getting one of them is going to be hard enough, given the salary cap situation that the Cavs are facing. That tempers the excitement a bit. This summer was always going to be about landing one difference maker, not two." There's also a wrinkle on the Kuminga side that's shifted the picture entirely. Reports out of the Kuminga market suggest his path may no longer even run through Cleveland the same way it once did. Cleveland's pursuit of Watson could mean the Kuminga option is on the back burner. With next to no chance, the franchise lands both young forwards given their cap situation, and if the Cavaliers are successful in landing Watson in a sign and trade, it would take another option off the table for Kuminga. Whichever one lands first effectively closes the door on the other. Cleveland doesn't have the room to add both. What's undeniable is that the front office has been operating with a specific sequence in mind from the very start of the summer, and every move traces back to it. Get under the apron. Lock in Harden on team-friendly terms. Use the flexibility to win a sign and trade for a starting wing. The Schroeder-Mann swap was never the headline story on its own. It was the mechanism that made the rest of the sequence possible. And for a fan base that watched its team get swept out of the conference finals by a bigger, longer opponent, that sequence is the whole appeal. Cleveland isn't rebuilding, it isn't tanking. It made a calculated bet that shedding a proven veteran for cap room now buys the chance to add a 23-year-old two-way, championship-tested wing before the leaves change color. Whether that bet pays off depends on whether Kuminga's price finally drops, whether Denver blinks on Watson, and whether Harden's patience holds just long enough for Cleveland to finish what it started on that quiet Friday in August.